So I'm going to tell you a personal story today about my fawn response, and I'm hoping it's something that everyone can learn from. So I'm going to tell the story in a way that I don't love when people tell stories this way, but I'm sort of stuck, right? They tell you a story, but they don't give you all the details. But for a variety of reasons, I can't give all the details, but it's my story. And despite how horrible it's been, there is, I learned something huge, and I think it's worth sharing, right? I wish I hadn't learned it this way, but there it is. You know, experience is a very mean teacher. In the past month, I have endured not one, but two relatively significantly traumatic events in my life, both of which in the moment that they happened, I was at a lot of risk in both cases, right? Something very bad could have happened, and even possibly life-changing or life-ending injuries, right? The injury in one case will be an issue for quite a while for me, for at least several months, and I'm being treated, and hopefully it will resolve after that. But it's definitely changed the rhythms of my life. And obviously, I didn't die or fully lose functioning because I'm sitting here and talking to you. But it's definitely affected my day-to-day. And for those seconds, my body and nervous system, though, mounted up as though something catastrophic was happening and was about to happen for a variety of stuff, legal stuff and all this stuff. Like I said, I can't really give all the specifics. But in the last month, I've had all the acute responses to trauma we have. Nightmares, sort of flattened mood, change in appetite, panic attacks. I'm hyper aware of my surroundings. I've had some loss of a sense of meaning and purpose. I really want to be alone. It's trauma 101 kind of stuff that I'm experiencing. I actually had a nightmare the other night where I woke up screaming, which is not like me. And I guess, you know, sometimes being a shrink is good. I knew what it was about. I grounded. I talked myself through it. I said, this is your system, letting it go, reacting to what it encoded, blah, blah, blah. I got through it, but it was definitely unsettling because I don't think I've probably done that since I was a kid. But it was my fawn response that facilitated me getting into both of these situations. And the fawn response, and folks, just plugging it, Dr. Ingrid Clayton is going to have a great book coming out about the fawn response next year. Stay tuned because I'll keep you posted as that gets closer. But that fawn response is that involuntary response and frankly involuntary adaptation. It's reflexive. We're not doing this on purpose. That we make to potentially harmful situations. It's the accommodation, it's the people pleasing, it's not conscious. We do it to stay safe, as with all trauma responses. And then over time, it becomes ingrained in us and it's just our reflex. So the tension of not fawning it's very uncomfortable, right? Many of us learned this fawn response as children, staying close to the abusers or the invalidators in our midst, being good, appeasing, yielding children to protect ourselves, not stepping away from situations where we felt uncomfortable. All of it was to keep us safe. And that gets hardwired, and we always do it. We smile, we give the hug we don't want to give, we accommodate, we make sure we don't take up too much space. We want people to view us as easy breezy and never a bother. We may endure invalidating conversations, intrusive comments, or doing things that we don't want. And again, while we are doing the thing, that the driver, the fawn response, it's reflexive. It's not codependency, it's safety. Through a lot of years of work on this, I know this about myself. And in these circumstances, I fawned. I gave in on some things I shouldn't have. I didn't want to do the things. I went along, I did them, I went to the places, and then bam, bad things happened. Like I said, both circumstances ended up in almost disasters and frankly kind of a real disaster. And interestingly, I also learned in real time, in a real-time manner, the other big lesson about trauma. That sometimes the invalidating, not sometimes, all the time, the invalidating, minimizing, gaslighting responses or frank lies we face after a trauma might feel worse than the trauma itself. People saying things to you like, oh, is it really that bad? Which then leads us to doubt ourselves and our reactions and wondering, maybe I'm making too big a deal about this. After the trauma happens to us, people say ridiculous, invalidating stuff like, well, I didn't intend for that bad thing to happen to you, or we've never had anything like that happen before, or people just don't give you the assistance you need or disappear when you need their help and you become an inconvenience. It's as though that the unwillingness of other people to see you after that trauma magnifies the lack of safety and it etches the trauma in more deeply. The world feels far less safe. And I actually had a unique experience because while the initial response after one of these traumas was deeply invalidating and gaslighting and minimizing and frankly dangerous, after another couple of days, the responses I got from people when I spoke honestly about what happened was very validating and helpful and kind. But there was a little bit of a shift in the narrative that now I was a problem to be dealt with. That didn't help, but at least there was some kindness. And note to everyone, please stop asking everyone to tell their trauma stories over and over again so you can validate whether the person who experienced the bad thing actually deserves to be upset. Nobody wants to be upset. If someone said something bad happened to them, hold space for it and don't question it. Just something we all need to be aware of. But let's go back to that fawn response, because the fawn response was meant to keep me safe. Twice in a month, it made me dangerously unsafe. The trauma response stopped being protective, something that happens all the time. But what this video is about is what I personally call, I think, what might slowly be the end of my fawn response. Obviously, it's not all gone. We can't just scrub these very hardwired responses. But I think I personally had to hit a sort of fawn rock bottom. Had to see situations when I was actually put in and kept in a fair amount of peril. After the second one, the fawning kind of stopped. I kind of don't love this new Dr. Ramani. I find her a bit colder, a little bit more demanding. I'm judging this new non-fawning me. I don't know that other people notice the difference. I do. I'm saying no a lot more often. And a downstream effect has to become more discerning. I'm saying no to more things because I just don't feel comfortable or safe. You really figure out who and what the safe spaces are, and the places I would traditionally go and often get burned, I now don't. But I hate that it took such horrifically harmful experiences to happen. But as with so many things, that fawning rock bottom took me seeing the dynamics in a really intense, concentrated manner, to go from supply to discard in 6 hours flat, to be smiled at politely and not helped while I was having a real issue, for people to stare at me blankly when I told them about the terrible thing that happened and think I was insane. Something sort of quietly snapped, broke inside of me. So that's my story, but what does it have to do with surviving from narcissistic or harmful relationships? First of all, we cannot wait for people to have disasters and physically harmful experiences happen to them, which risk their health and lives to get here. Here's the difference, and this was the light bulb aha moment that I had. These weren't the first scary, dangerous things that have ever happened to me. I've had a few bad things happen much earlier in my life, childhood, adolescence. But I didn't have this narcissism framework. Nobody did. And so I didn't get it earlier in life. And if anything, those earlier traumas got folded back and reinforced my fawn response. They magnified my self-blame because there was no framework and there was no healthy response to it. But the getting it, the knowing what narcissism and gaslighting and invalidation and cognitive dissonance and enabling and denial, what all of it are, then when the bad things happened, you may actually have the framework to see it clearly. Again, it's like glasses. Without wearing the glasses, things are blurry. But having the framework to see it for what it is, that may be what it takes to start to see everything a lot more clearly. I don't want bad things to happen to people to help move out of these problematic cycles or to become more aware of them. And if you are in a narcissistic relationship or healing from one or have ongoing contact with one, then you are getting small reminders all the time. Write them down. Remind yourself they are happening. Practice the techniques, the discernment, the not going deep, the not sharing good and bad news, learning to say no, and write that down too. Sketch out the patterns because the data is there. In my case, in both of these situations, I felt it in my body. in both of these dangerous circumstances. I felt it. But polite, fawny, go along to get along Ramani went against that and smiled and said, of course, that's fine. Of course we can make that work. Ramani's body knew, it is always known. The part of me that wants to connect and attach, that part of me that feels that she needs to be easy breezy, easy to get along with, flexible, no drama, no demands Ramani, invisible, safe Ramani, who needs nothing. It's as though circumstance had to come along once and for all and scare easy breezy Ramani to death and stop that easy breezy Ramani for having such a strong voice. Manners, I can do the manners part. Going along with stuff that I can do, but going along with stuff that doesn't feel right, no. And finding my loud no, good. Interestingly, one of the nightmares I had in the past few weeks and woke up and yelling in my sleep, which again, I was alone. I was in a hotel too. So heaven help the other people in the hotel, not my problem. And strangely, I woke up, so I was aware of what I was screaming. And I woke up and I was screaming 911 in my sleep and the word no. Like I said, maybe I did as a kid, I don't remember, but certainly not as an adult. And maybe that was it. The end of the fawn for me was a lifelong need to finally say no, no, hell no. And it came from an unconscious part of me and from my body and system to get shaken to the core. And from that deep, unconscious, sleeping part of me, that no came rolling out of me. So as I go forward, I'll be polite. I love manners and politeness. And I'll be polite as I say no. And I may lose people, and I may lose that perception of easy breezy Ramani. But I hope this is a lesson for other people because I'm going through it now. All of us need to think about what it means to live in a new identity when we don't engage in these toxic dances and potentially being called demanding or needy or entitled or even selfish for saying, no, I'm not going to do that. New memories now, painful memories, have overwritten my old patterns. Let's see how long this lasts. So far, so good. The nightmares are going to fade. And because I keep saying no, I'm going to have more time on my hands. We survivors of narcissistic relationships, we care too much about what other people think about us because that was so crucial to maintaining attachments. Because that forever shifting sand of the relationship, not being consistently loved or being transactionally loved, that made us into pleasing machines. I hope that you don't let it get to the place I let it get to and circumstance let it get to. Pay attention and remember, unless you fully subjugate to the convenient reality of not only the narcissist, but also the enablers, people may always see you as the problem because it allows other people the luxury of keeping their unrealistic reality going. That is not your responsibility. Find your no, take your time, listen to your body, and be okay with other people having their own narrative about you because you don't give in. And then pay attention to their responses. Antagonistic and enabling people usually teach us they are harmful twice. First, they put us in danger, and then they leave us in danger. It's uncomfortable to integrate those truths, but you gotta do it, please. Because I'm telling you, I didn't, and I am paying for it. Thanks again.